it is remarkable. I mean, in a way, it sort of reminds you that this is the reality TV president. He seems to love being able to have that moment. He's very aware of the cameras being there. He wants the shock value. This is very much like the Zelensky meeting where there's going to be an ambush. He wants that moment where everybody turns around and gasps in horror.
The next thing I wanted to talk about, guys, is this meeting between Donald Trump and his South African counterpart, which started off fine and then descended into this.
Death, 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 horrible death.
Horrible death. President Trump essentially ambushed Cyril Ramaphosa over the treatment of white farmers.
A lot of people are very concerned with regard to South Africa, and that's really the purpose of the meeting, and we'll see how that turns out. But we have many people that feel they're being persecuted, and they're coming to the United States. So we take from many locations if we feel there's persecution or genocide going on.
Well, President Ramaphosa responded,
if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective.
And then this happened.
It has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure, we will.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would. And turn the lights down.
Well, that was President Trump playing a video of some South African politicians chanting "Shoot the Boer," a song, an old anti-apartheid song, and also with other bits in the video that he shared. The source of them remains unclear. One was a clip of a road lined with crosses, which he said were all murdered farmers, which seems unlikely. As not that, I mean, somewhere in the region of about 30 farmers are murdered in South Africa each year, and there were hundreds of crosses. Of course, the South African-born billionaire Elon Musk was there looking on silently as well. Matthew, what do you make of all this? Because it seems to me, look, I spent a year living in South Africa. It's a country I know relatively well. It is no fun, I'd imagine, a lot of the time, being a white farmer in South Africa, but that's partly because it's sort of quite dangerous and no fun being almost anyone in South Africa. The murder rate is horrific, in pretty much all communities. There isn't really any evidence that white farmers are treated any worse than anyone else. Indeed, there's quite a lot of evidence they're treated quite a lot better than everybody else. What do you think about this story? What do you think about the ambush?
Well, I thought the Times, as you said, the Times explained and debunked a great deal of what Trump said. So what this demonstrates to me in microcosm is that Trump obviously listened to somebody who said there's a genocide going on against South African farmers, isn't the kind of person who would go and look at the data to see whether that's a credible allegation and therefore to seek to address it in the conversation with the South African president. Instead, he believes it all. He says that he believes it. So his sycophantic cabinet, who just seem to echo whatever's in Trump's mind at any one time, go along with it. They hand him a video to play of an opposition leader singing that song that you mentioned and the photographs. And a foreign leader is ambushed in public view with no real opportunity to put their case across because Trump is dominating who's asking questions. I mean, it is if that is how American policy is being conducted, because Trump has some theory, very eccentric theory on tariffs, and he just executes it and does what he wishes. This is a democracy. He is democratically elected. This is what the American people decided they wanted. I suppose the only thing that you can say in mitigation is that they're probably so horrified by the woke nonsense on the Democratic left that this, is some backlash against that. But it's terrifying, I think, looking from the outside in.
Manveen, once upon a time, we'd have been sort of shocked. People would have written opinion columns and made documentaries about the fact that videos like this circulated at all. And now they're shown in the Oval Office by the president to visiting leaders.
I know, it is remarkable. I mean, in a way, it sort of reminds you that this is the reality TV president. He seems to love being able to have that moment. He's very aware of the cameras being there. He wants the shock value. This is very much like the Zelensky meeting where there's going to be an ambush. He wants that moment where everybody turns around and gasps in horror. But it really does reveal just how bonkers the administration is. He's getting his information from people who are very ill-informed. I happen to know a bit about this. I've spent quite a bit of time in South Africa, and I actually investigated. There was a campaign under President Zuma to try and go after a lot of sort of the white capitalists. They called it white monopoly capital. And in a way, it's a sign of just how much South Africa remains the rainbow nation, that it didn't catch on. People understood that this was sort of Zuma trying to hang on in power. And I thought
70% of the land in South Africa is owned by white farmers.
Yeah, but people aren't turning on them in the way that they were in Zimbabwe. This is not the same thing. This isn't a genocide as Donald Trump painted it. And it was so interesting to see one of the people in the Oval Office pointing that out was actually Johan Rupert, the richest man in South Africa, who sort of said, I was the victim of, a lot of those politicians you've shown in that video were calling for my blood. However, I still feel safe enough to leave my, doors unlocked in South Africa. Just to give you a bit of a reality check on the idea that there's some mad genocide being unleashed against white people. It's not true. South Africa is dangerous. There is a lot of crime.
I'm not sure I'd have left my doors unlocked in South Africa, to be fair.
But it depends on where you are. He was talking about in the country, which is where the farmers are, and actually that I can see that.
Matthew, sorry.
The absolutely extraordinary thing. I shouldn't laugh, really, but Trump's into golf, as you know, in a big way. He's actually quite good at golf. I know people think that he's like Kim Jong-il, who pretends he's good when he isn't, but he is good. If you're interested in Trump at golf, watch the YouTube video of him playing against Bryson DeChambeau. He's a very good golfer, but he loves golf. And the most ridiculous thing I think I've ever seen is he invites Gary Player, Ernie Els, and Retief Hussain over. Gary Player didn't make it, but then Ernie Els has asked his opinion on the geopolitics because Trump thinks because he's good at golf. I think he said in the press conference, "I like champions. They have a tough job. They have to get lots of birdies in front of a lot of people." And there's Hussain and Els sounding. I mean, it was just it's beyond satire in a way.
I can actually add to that, because the reason he believes these things about South Africa is because the people he listens to more than anybody in cabinet or his own vice president are the people he plays golf with. And Gary Player is one of them. And he cited, Donald Trump even named him, David Frost, who is one of his golf coaches, who hasn't actually lived in South Africa for decades, but has very set opinions on it. And these are the people who shaped his views. So I think actually Ramaphosa, understanding that, brought Ernie Els and, sort of brought a couple of golfers over to try and counteract the argument. But the fact that you have to do that in the White House just shows you how mad politics have become.
Look, before we move on...
We've got to get Wayne Rooney and Beckham with part of our diplomatic outreach.
We need better golfers, I think. I don't think he respects footballers.
Justin Rose.
Before we move on from this, guys, I want to just respond to some of the people, the texts that people are sending in. Angela asks us to Google Julius Malema and his singing of the "Kill the Boer" anthem. Malema is a populist black politician. He does indeed sing the song "Kill the Boer." He does call for that and that raises all kinds of questions about how literal that's meant to be taken. And I often think, perhaps fairly literally, but then he's not in government.
Well,
he's not the...
I interviewed him around that time of the white monopoly capital, and it was hilarious because he was actually one of the people most against that term being used.
Right.
So he's more political than you'd imagine. And, I think they sing these because they're old apartheid songs. He doesn't... I mean, he's very happy to stoke a bit of that if he thinks it's going to get him some votes, but I don't think he actually wants a lot of the white monopoly capital to leave South Africa because the economy would be in real trouble.
I once heard it described as an extreme form of the Scots singing about sending the English homeless to think again, which I think is a bit too kind, but perhaps only a bit. Meanwhile, look, Robert, other people as well. Robert says, "Are your panel joking about the killing of white farmers?" Robert, I'm not sure why we would be. The murder rate in South Africa is well known. The murder rate of white farmers is well known. South Africa is an extremely violent place. Where I lived in Cape Town for about a year, the bar we used to go to, just around the corner, it was a relatively safe part of Cape Town, a place called Observatory, and we could walk around the corner to the bar and walk home at night, which is pretty rare. So even then this is only about 15, 20 years ago, even then was pretty rare in South Africa. And about 3 months after we went, our regular bar was held up at gunpoint, and I think 4 or 5 people were shot.
Yeah, that
was not described as a genocide against hipsters. It's just this is the murder rate in a really, really violent country. And I think that these facts, people want to believe what they want to believe, but the facts there, I think, are pretty well known, if not necessarily by the American president.